more of CJ's On the Verge. Brought to you by It'sCanadian.com. Your entertainment source without the syrup.
Good evening, I'm Malone. Tonight, a very special guest from Scarborough, Ontario, who for the past 3 decades has rocked countless Canadian stages and has lived to tell the tale. In fact, he tells several tales of sex, drugs, and rock and roll in his new autobiography. It's called Travels with My Amp, and tonight we'll highlight a few of his escapades over the years. Everything from rubbing elbows with Mick Taylor and John Bonham to receiving that perfect Hummer. And we'll throw in a few of his songs to boot. This is Greg Godovitz, a.k.a. Goddo. It's on the Verge, Calgary's best rock, CJAY 92. Calgary's best rock, CJAY 92. Was it something I said from Goddo in the studio tonight with Greg Godovitz? How you doing, man?
Fine, and now it's got to be, was it something I wrote?
Really? The autobiography is called Travels with My Amp. What a hell of a book, man. I really enjoyed reading this, and you did not leave anything out.
Well, you know, the book goes from 64 to 83, so I've left out the last 17 years.
Okay.
But it's if it does well, it certainly screams for a sequel. Had I wrote the entire 30-year, 35-year history, it would look like the War and Peace of rock and roll. So.
Exactly. You and I have something in common. I met the great Bo Diddley about a year and a half ago, although I didn't. He wasn't with Ronnie Wood the night that I met him, and you've probably got a better story than I do with Bo Diddley. Couple of stories.
I got a couple with Bo. I remember we were in Montreal, and we were staying down by Crescent de Maisonneuve area, really nice area. And I walk out of my hotel, and this guy's walking towards me, and I see, it's a squat figure, and he's got a vest on, and I see the trademark hat with the little loops on it, and I went, "Hey, Bo Diddley," it was great for me because he turned around, he gave me a wave, but it was a great opportunity to use his signature riff, on him. Later on, I did a thing where I was with Ronnie Wood. Was playing with Bo Diddley at this club, and I sort of went out. I was supplying them amplifiers for the show, but I was welcome backstage. Now Ronnie was three sheets to the wind.
Surprise!
Oh yeah, what a stretch.
Yeah.
And Bo Diddley was sitting in the chair, sort of ignoring everybody, and people were trying to talk to him, and these girls were trying to get his attention, but he was just sitting there grumpy in the chair. And Ronnie Wood sees me, like leaning against the wall. I'm trying to stay out of the way. And he walks over to me and sticks his nose like almost on mine. And we both have some pretty severe noses, right? And he looks at me and goes, Bo Diddley is a very strange individual. And then just stumbles away, right?
Right.
So, I've had the chance that, it's always been it wasn't anything normal. It was always some sort of, strange situation. Skip Prokop from Lighthouse sent me with his wife to go see Cat Stevens. He had a gig and let me squire his wife to see Cat Stevens. This is when he was just starting to take off big time. He was playing Massey Hall, which is a 2,500-seat venue. Now, my friends Brian and Ed Pilling from Flood had left me to go to England, and they ended up being in Cat Stevens' band. Now, they were back in Canada, but for some reason they weren't going to the show. So they said, by all means, go backstage and tell Cat that we're in town and how you doing, much. So I write this note out, "Dear Cat, you don't know me. Had I been, 16 at the time when Brian and Ed left, I would have been part of your band too." And Brian and Ed say hello and all this. So I go back in. The dressing room is packed. He's just had a wonderful concert. And he comes over and he goes, "Are you the guy that sent that note backstage?" And I went, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, let me tell you, man, the Pillins ain't my friends. They ripped me off." And he's screaming in my face and freaking out.
Really?
And I see this red shirt I've got on. I mean, you folks at home can't see, but it's a very red shirt. My face was twice as red as a pomegranate, man. And, of course, Marsha Prokop, she was just going, "Oh, my God, what an incredibly bad idea bringing this guy to this." So it was always some sort of a situation where I'd meet these big stars and they'd always start yelling at me for some reason.
And speaking of the Pillings, which one was it that Robert Plant borrowed Ed's stage mannerisms?
Yeah.
Really?
And when Ed and Brian were in England initially, they were from Birmingham, which is where John Bonham and Robert came from. And Robert didn't have long hair in those days when he was with, I think, the Band of Joy initially. Ed was like a god in this band called I think it was the Idle Race that he played with over there. And they were on the same circuit together. And Ed Pilling is very much like Robert, long blonde hair, statuesque, very theatrical in his performance. And when I first saw Robert Plant doing that whole thing he was doing, Ed said he ripped that whole thing off for me. They told me a great story that when Zeppelin first came over to Canada, they went and crashed at Ed's apartment, and Robert and John wanted something to smoke.
Right.
So they went down, Ed and Robert Plant went down to the next door neighbor, knocked on the door, and the guy opened the door and he went, "Yeah, man. Hey, man." Whoa, man. He freaked right out because there was Ed Billy with like Robert Plant with him, Come on in, dude. But they actually went over there. Instead of staying in their hotel, they slept on the floor with these guys because they were really good friends.
Oh, man, I love it. I'm Stone Malone in studio tonight with legendary Canadian rocker Goddo, or Greg Godovitz. How about another Goddo classic? We're going to roll one out right now. It's called Oh, Carol, Kiss My Whip. Going to hear that in just a second. Carol Pope, right?
Definitely
That's
Carol
the
Pope.
reference there, the history to this track.
She's got a great book out as well called Anti-Diva.
Right now?
She does, yeah.
Yeah?
So after you pick up Travels with My Amp, you can dash out and buy hers next.
Okay, sounds good. Here it is. It's called Oh, Carol from Goddo on the Verge, Calgary's best rock, CJAY 92.
This is Zorro Idelkis of the Zombats, local punk rock band, and I'd just like to say to Carol Pope of Rough Trade, hey baby, kiss my whip,
Calgary's best rock, CJAY 92. That is Goddo. The song is called Oh, Carol, Kiss My Whip. We're going to take a break for a couple of minutes. When we come back, more war stories from Mr. Godovitz and his autobiography, including a great story about Cock On, the album, and also Jim Carrey.
Stay tuned.
CJAY 92. Too much carousing from Goddo. In studio tonight with Greg Godovitz. He's got a brand new autobiography out, and it's called Travels with My Amp. All right, in 1972, the seventh band, I think it was the seventh band you were in, called Flood, featuring brothers Ed and Brian Pilling, who we'll talk about a bit later, and we already talked about. Anyway, in 72, the band releases an album that would cause plenty of controversy.
What happened was this. Brian and Ed being English,
Yeah.
I mean, they spoke like they spoke. And one of the expressions that we used quite a bit in those days was cock on, which basically was thumbs up, right on.
Oh, really?
That's all it means.
Okay.
It's just one of those English slang expressions.
Okay.
So we wanted to call the album Cock On, and the record company, of course, being, back in those days, not wanting to take much of a chance in offending somebody, they said there's absolutely no way you can do that. So what we did to get back at them, we posed for a shot in a magazine where we sort of tucked we posed naked, but we tucked everything in.
Okay.
So basically, cock off.
That picture's in the book, if you're...
Yeah, it is in the book. And that became just this amazing to do, because the poster that went out in this magazine, which I believe was called Rainbow in those days, ended up in every high school girl's locker in Ontario.
Really?
And we got banned from playing high schools. We got totally banned. They would not have the band. In my song Cock On, which I wrote during that period, but Flood never did, Goddo eventually recorded it, there's a line that says, "A picture in the nude, the kids all think it's cool. Some parents must complain, the band is banned from school." So that's where that line comes in that song. So, and you know what, years later, the Bare Naked Ladies also did that same shot, and I'm sure someone told them about what we did, but we were much cuter and much thinner. So,
Well, I don't know about that. Anyway.
at the time we were, I'm not saying now.
That's true. Jim Carrey, let's talk about him. He actually opened for you guys in Barrie, Ontario one night in the early 80s, and he was booed off the stage.
Yeah, I hired Jim. He was a guy that I met at Yuck Yucks. He was about 18 years old, just starting his career, and I thought he was just really funny guy. At that time, he was doing, two-piece suits, and his shtick basically was Sammy Davis Jr., and, the Steve Martin arrow through the head stuff, and
Right.
mostly impressions. But I loved him. And now we were recording the best seat in the house, so all of the microphones would have been set up for our set. So we needed an opening act, but not a rock band. So I said to Jim, look, we'll give you $100 a show, and you can open up the audience and warm them up, and then we'll come out and do our show. Well, I'm backstage while he's on. I'd seen him so many times that I didn't feel it was necessary for me to watch him. And I'm backstage while he's on, and all of a sudden I hear this coming through the walls. Get off, there's a Goddo, boo! The whole audience is throwing stuff at him, and he's trying to do his tap dances and stuff, and he flees the stage. Good night, ladies and gentlemen, and off he goes. I go up on stage, and I can see the kid was just crushed. And I'm pointing my finger, and we've actually got photographs of this stuff. I'm pointing my finger at the audience going, this guy is a friend of mine. I'm ashamed of you guys for doing this. He is going to be a massive star someday, and you're gonna tell people that you saw him here. And then I did 10 minutes of stand-up, and I was fabulous. I went over great. But the way it works out is that now this guy makes $20 million a movie. I paid him $100. He didn't show up the next night, so I got him for I saved $19,999,900. So I had a tremendous saving on Jim Carrey.
And he remembers that story when he talks about interviews. Even today, he'll mention that.
Yeah, I've heard him on a radio station back in Toronto, and they said, "What is the worst gig you ever had?" And he goes, "I don't even have to think about it." When I opened up for Goddo when they did their live album.
Okay. I'm Snow Malone in studio tonight with Greg Godovitz. Time for another Goddo classic. Here's Bus Driver Blues on The Verge, Calgary's best rock, CJAY 92. Calgary's best rock, CJAY 92. That's Goddo in studio tonight with legendary Canadian rocker Greg. Sorry, big man.
We'll come in again.
Greg Godovitz. His new autobiography is called Travels with My Amp. Let's talk about Mr. Hawkins.
All right. Well, I met Roddy Hawkins when I was doing publicity for Dave Bedini's book. We were on Pamela Wallen together, and we're back in the green room. And as you can tell, I'm no shrinking violet. Now, Ronnie's usually the life of the party, but this particular night, I had him in stitches. And he didn't really know a lot about me because, he's a rockabilly cat, and I'm a hard rock guy. And finally, his wife and him said, you should come up to the farm sometime. So we became friends. And I eventually talked him out of retirement and put a really good band together. And it was like a great thrill for me because one thing I always felt I missed in my career was the fact that I never played with Ronnie Hawkins. Not only was I in his band, but I was his band leader. So it was a great thing. But I got a great story for you. We're sitting out in front of his house one day. And, a couple of things have been ingested here and there. And it's one of those really hot days. And he's just staring off into space. And I see his mother-in-law, who's about 98 years old. She's over by my car, and she's stoking up all this wood. And I said, Ronnie, what's the old lady doing over there? He goes, well, that's Mama. She's commencing to stoke something up and fire it. And I said, well, she's awful close to my car. He goes, don't worry, she's got good aim. She won't hit your car. So the next thing I hear this boom. And I look over, and there is a mushroom cloud coming. She's poured gasoline all over this stuff, this debris. And there's this huge fireball coming up in this cloud. And he's not even looking at her. And she's stumbling back, and I'm worried she's going to fall into the flames. And I go, Ronnie, the old lady's really close to the fire. He goes, she's real dry. She'll burn fast. That's an unknown Ronnie Hawkins story.
We could sit here all day, and there's so many stories from this book. It's called Travels with My Amp. It's the autobiography of Greg Godovitz. And make sure you get. Where can people find that right now?
It'll be in all the stores. I don't know when this is going to air, but it should be in all the stores in Calgary within 2 weeks.
Okay.
But if you want to get it online, you can go to our website, which is bullseyecanada.com. Just like it sounds, Bullseye. We're out west, so you guys all know what bulls are. But bullseyecanada.com, and you can order one there.
Excellent. Thanks for the conversation, Greg.
And if people order it by the internet, I'll sign it for them as well.
Oh, cool. Bonus.
By the way, looking forward to coming out here with Goddo in the summertime for the first time in about 20 years.
Well, keep us posted. What's happening with that?
I'll let you know, Snow.
All right. Thanks, man.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it. I'm Snow Malone. We'll do it again next week. We'll check out some of the best in Canadian music, one band at a time. We call it On the Verge.